I'm Mary D'Souza. I run a single family office and I'm on the board. Fun fact, I'm on the board of a trucking company with some really nice southern boys. So with that, and we are investors in private credit, in real estate, in venture capital, private equity. So that's a little bit of a background in us. And in terms of background in me, I spent quite a lot of time at GE Capital. I ran the secondary investment business, did the first unit tranche in the marketplace. With that, I'll move to Lisa. And Lisa, give us a little background and then we'll dig deeper.
Hi, my name is Lisa Maricino. I'm really happy to be here at this event and also thankful to Mark to make me part of the community. My background is I started my world out in the wild jungles of Wall Street at Goldman Sachs. You build grow up as an entrepreneur and it's grateful Flint today. Yeah, so this is, I used to come here a lot, but in any case, so it brings back a lot of memories. From there, I went to a hedge fund as a partner with the Ziff family, and it's a Ziff family office. And so I kind of both in researched and then invested in technology, mostly software companies. A few years later, I went to work raising money for a company that's called Executive with my old boss at Goldman Sachs. And it really opened up my eyes to social enterprises and what would it be like in the world if every model had a kind of give back component? We probably would have a lot less problems today. And so that really kind of put me on a track to really help companies cross the chasm that had a social impact or component to them, which led me to Fabien Cousteau, which is where I am currently as CEO. I've been at it doing that for a few years. I joined in late 2019. When I asked what Fabien Cousteau was doing, and they said, well, he's building this underwater home, habitat and lab where you can live and work once you're saturated and do lots of research. And I said, well, that doesn't sound crazy at all. I'll take the job. And I did. And it isn't crazy at all. The real question is, why don't we have more underwater habitat? So I am the CEO and I'm helping build the International Space Station in the ocean. And I'll end there.
Hey guys, I'm Nashmi Tuku, and I'll keep it short because I haven't been alive for very long. I was born into a nonprofit, and I grew up overseas, hearing horrific stories and seeing some horrific things, and it just kind of changed my mindset at a younger age. And came back to the States, studied a bunch of random things, and got into the world of startups and founded a startup, failed miserably there. And then through that process, I learned so much about what does it look like to lead and to innovate and to learn from your failures. And so I got to know some really phenomenal people through that. And one of those people being Peter Lupoff, which is a family that I currently work with, heading up their investments in private. So it's been incredible to focus on diverse funds specifically. It's a looking at African American led funds and focus on funds. And
Okay, thanks for having us. Yeah.
Well done. I have been around for a very long time. Longer than most of you. I come to this world of investing through being an operator. I was co-founder of Moz, which is known as SEO Moz, that was largely by their own people marketing software, which I built actually with my eldest son, so an unusual business relationship. Now I'm a general manager, general partner actually with Ann Kennedy here at Masters Fund, and you also heard from our brilliant data scientist before she hopped on the stage.
Thank you. You and I spent some time in Miami, going from the airport.
Right? I don't
to
know if
Augusta
you're looking at
and
any of the
stuff.
choices.
And
I'm
I
thinking
found it really
for that
fascinating.
address, the number of conversations.
I told her
Maybe
just the quantity.
and
I've
studies
seen that
because
she did it. I'll
I've
look
worked
right
with a lot
now.
of
In 2 seconds.
stage companies, and I know what it takes. So
2 seconds.
maybe you can give us a little color as to why you decided to take this. And I spent some time grilling you, right, in terms of how you're going to raise capital and everything. So I found that really interesting, that you took over that challenge. And it is a challenge to raise that much capital, so maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because there are a lot of different people, you know, who are looking to raise capital.
Well, sure. So one of the things, I guess, the first question is, why did I take this job? And I certainly, sometimes I say I'm also a mother of two, a 22-year-old and a 19-year-old, and I definitely had easier days on Wall Street than being a mother and being CEO, no question. That was the easiest part of my life. So the real question is, why did I do it, right? Why did I take this job? Why did I work even raising money for this company called Gifts That Give prior to that? And then why did I start my own business to try to help social impact companies cross the chasm? So I fully believe here, as we all are, you know, in this world of capital is what drives new ideas and innovations, no question. And without capital, you can't do it. Even as a nonprofit, this was first started, Baby Gustow's and Endeavor, where they started to try to raise capital for the whole thing, which is about anywhere from 50 to 75 million is what we're looking for right now. They tried to raise capital in the fundraise, I should say, in the nonprofit world, and it was almost impossible, because without a sustainable model that, you know, you can't really create value. And you can't create, because we don't want to build one of these, we want multiple of these, so we can drive research and development and solutions and storytelling. So that really kind of opened my eyes to this idea that if we had social impact, we could really drive a lot more solutions. And very much like space, for example, that they've had like $270 billion invested in the last 10 years. That have created 1,700 companies. So if you think about what's possible in the ocean and other problems that we're facing with our planet today, I think that capital really is the answer, right? So that when I was given the opportunity to take a job to help save the ocean and the planet, and also raise capital to do so, I couldn't really get that up. It really is, it kind of, this job encompasses a lot of my loves, right? Saving the ocean, which I started scuba diving when I was 21, and really saving potentially something that will help all of humanity. And diversity and equity and inclusion is a big part of the DNA of Fabian and company. He had 2 women on his first mission for 31 days where he lived underwater. And it wasn't easy to do, to find 2 young women just had graduated to become aquanauts, and that's what he did. So I love his pedigree and his DNA and his legacy. So every day during COVID, it was exemplified. I woke up every day, I got up from my bed, went to my office a few steps away, and I was inspired every day to be doing what I'm doing. So it's not easy. If it were easy, other people would be doing this all over. But I'm really committed to seeing this through and to raising the capital. But to just talk that really briefly and then I'll pass it on, it's not easy. As a woman, it's not easy. And I implore what you're doing, because it is so difficult as a woman to raise capital. It's a big endeavor, so that's there as well. But I think with a little help from this entire group here.
And if anybody can do it, I think you can. I know you've got the determination, the residents
Can I make
to do that.
a comment? I get, you know, what women think about. And echoing what I hear, a lot of women don't take it to make it like guys do. And they need they really need an Elon Musk back kind of a.
But you also need a community. It's Elon Musk and Ron Barron and a lot of people.
But how much money do they go in space? But the ocean, very little, that kind of, maybe there's a female equivalent.
Well, that's a great point. And I think you have to go where the money is, and space will become one of our largest customers. So we are going where the money is. And I think Musk will be one on our list, but we will look at Axios, we're looking at all private. Absolutely. Yes.
So Nesha, you know, since you work for Peter's family office, maybe you can talk about how you guys are helping women founders and what you guys invest in.
So we indirectly, I guess, help women founders, we only focus on funds. But we focus on investing through two lenses, as I mentioned before, which is racial equity, focusing on African American fund managers. And we also focus on climate. And if we can get both, it's rare, but that's the best possible option.
It's mainly US, so.
Only US, yeah. And I think one of the things that we found ourselves really excited by is focusing people first, and people always say that, it's like, oh yeah, people matter. But one of the things we keep on seeing is there's a lot of excited people focusing on diversity and inclusion, and they say that they care, but it's not actually a part of their own personal DNA. And I just like to call out BS where I see it. And I really don't care if you have like 5 Black people on your team, if you're just doing it to look a certain way. I really want it to be the fact that you focus on incredible talent, you focus on incredible people, you prioritize putting other people ahead of yourself. And so what you can kind of get that vibe when you meet people in person. You can kind of sense that, and any other allocator probably knows the same drill. It's like when you're looking at companies, you can sense who's really authentic. So that's probably the number one thing we look at. And then of course, all the other diligence that goes with it, but authenticity, no blackwashing, greenwashing, any of that. So. Sorry.
So Julian, maybe you can explain to us, why you decided to start a fund that's focused on women, and maybe a little bit about your background.
The short version is this: not on my watch. And that came from coming out of Moz as an operator, and then finding out that women since 1946 continue to get 2% venture capital. And so yes, it began with IRE, and it began, if you will, with social aspect. But then,
Do you have issues like when you started Mars?
if I had known the numbers, I would not have had the guts to keep going. I have so much respect for the women who stand up to what I call the barbed wire, the brick wall behind that, and the guns behind that, and they continue to march. It's extraordinary. I mean, if you told me 70%, I would have said, sure, it's like salaries. We'll get on with it, we'll get over it, and not in my lifetime, 136 years, we'll have power to 2%. Right? Now, the question is big, do women not build scalable corporations because they don't get the money, or they're not getting the money because they're not building scalable corporations? And truly, the answer is you shouldn't care as an investor, just come up with the investment model that meets them where they are, fund what they have, and then let's illuminate what's possible. So this is really a far more nuanced subject about how to address, if you will, diverse founding leaders, right? You're faced with the same issues here. If you are investing in anything then other than the founding team that has the most amount of capital flowing to it, we talked about this yesterday, the 98% goes to guys, but more than 2/3 of that goes to the tall white guy with baritone voices and all of those other things go with it, right? If you're investing in anything else, anyone else, you better come up with a funding model that is going to return a reasonable ROI to your LPs that is commensurate with the risk of the asset class. Right? And you can't do that if these guys aren't going to get through the Series A, and they don't. Even with the women, the 2%, it means when it goes to white women. The amount of money going to Black women in the United States who are building their companies, or Latinx and or Asian American, whatever, all of them combined, less than 0.5%. The rest of the 1.5 and a little bit will go to white women. Right? The imbalancers are extraordinary. Now the questions are begged, why, and all of that, we get that. Here's the thing, it is hubris for us to think that a tiny sliver of the human genome, the tall white guy with baritone voice who's sitting on Sandhill Road and so on, can address every problem and every solution and every founder and every management style and bring value to it and build value for others. That's nonsense. Stop shouting at the tall white guys with baritone voices, get out there and do the work. The money must flow from different hands to get to different hands. We have to activate capital among the entire world. right? All genders, all ethnicities, all backgrounds, and we have to get that job done. It's not a tomorrow, it's not even the next decade-ish. I don't get to see the end of this, Anne doesn't get to see the end of this, but we get to plant the seed. We also get to leverage the economics of it that says, well, it's an anomaly the size of Minneapolis, and nobody's walking through it, how about we do? Right? If women are getting 2% of venture capital, and they do get through that Series A, why is anybody surprised that they are an anomaly and they're returning an average of 35% higher ROI? Why are you surprised? Right? Of course they're an anomaly. Look what they had to get through. Now, if 50% of the capital is going to women and 50% is going to the guys, I'm going to hazard a wild guess up here. You're going to get about the same results out of both. Right? Until then, you have a financial opportunity. So we leverage it, we move things forward, we're fairly realistic about it. Again, it's nice to have the social mission, but you best get on with the numbers, because otherwise it's not sustainable, and then we're talking philanthropy. And that doesn't work in a for-profit market.
Thank you. I'm meeting more and more people these days who are focused on women. And there are a lot of men who are focused on women and raising funds to finance companies that are run by women and have women CEOs. So I think maybe a good idea to put all of you together, because I believe in scale. You can't get anything done without scale. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my family. We're 5, and we're 3 girls and 2 boys. And guess who the entrepreneurs in our family are? The women, right? We've got animal healthcare company to make drugs for dogs and horses. And then my younger sister, she runs a public relations company in Dubai, and she started that 18 years ago, and in an Arabic country, right? And
They didn't let you play in their circles when you made your own.
no, my brothers were very supportive. Yeah.
Yes, I'm talking about the general world.
No, we just marched to our own drum. We never let anybody stop us. We were unstoppable. And we believe in being inclusive. And my sister's built a PR company where I think everyone's a woman, with the exception of one guy. And you can build these models. You just have to have the mindset to do that. And I think, Elon Musk didn't start out with nothing. He started out with money from PayPal, right? If he didn't have that money from PayPal, he couldn't have done Tesla. So, yeah, and he couldn't have done Tesla with Ron Barron and all these people who believe in it. And we've got to find a way to support each other, right? And I'm really excited with what you're doing, right? And we got to get somebody like Elon or a female version of Elon or whatever to help you guys scale that up, because there's so much good that can come out of the seed, right? Just like we're looking at the space of the same thing. And maybe you can talk a little bit more about how what you guys are doing will help innovation in other areas.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, because I think when you say, well, we're building the International Space Station, the ocean was like, what does that really mean? And what are you going to do down there? And so the proof of concept really started in 2014 when Fabian spent 31 days underwater with 5 scientists. So I think I'll start there. Besides the fact that his grandfather, Jacques Cousteau, built these in the 1960s. So just for a little history, it was really the space and ocean race, but the space race took over. So ocean kind of got left behind. But he continued to do what he did, and he passed that legacy on to Fabian. So Fabian kind of skipped a generation, but he's kind of the perfect person to pick up that torch. So in 2014, he decided to go and spend 31 days, one more day than his grandfather had done, in Aquarius, which is a 450 square foot small habitat and off the Keys. And he did so with 5 scientists. And in those 31 days, some extraordinary things happened. They spoke to 100,000 students with Skype in the classroom underwater. So now today, fast forward, Zoom in the classroom, with the kind of bandwidth we could create, it's limitless what we could do and the stories that we can tell. Yeah, they tested some technologies underwater that today are, multi-million-dollar Muse, which tracks circadian rhythms, the Edgertronic camera, which takes 20,000 frames per second, and they tested all of those underwater. And they didn't generate revenues from those because that wasn't a thing, but we will be testing products that will generate revenues to Proteus. The other thing they did, they got 34 billion impressions, so people really did listen and cared about what was going on underwater at the time. But the most significant thing that happened, and this is what got me to become CEO of this, was he said, we did about 3 years worth of equivalent research in 31 days. And I said, wait a minute, what do you mean by that? What do you mean you did 3 years worth of equivalent research in 31 days? He said, well, we were saturated. So if there are divers here, so you're limited to the dive tables to keep you safe. So after an hour or so, just as things are starting to get interesting, you got to go back up to the top. When you're saturated, your gases equalize and you basically can stay underwater. Really, we don't know, but maybe indefinitely, right? So you don't have to come back up to the surface. So at 60 feet is where we will be building this so that it's an air mix, it's non-toxic, oxygen is non-toxic to the human body at 60 feet. So you'll be living and working at 60 feet. You literally put on your suit, you go to your office, which is the ocean, you go out into the ocean and do your research, and you come back and you bring your specimens and your specimen there, and you do your experiment right in the lab, which is in your home. And then if you didn't get it right, you can put your wetsuit right back on and go out. So you can dive up to 10 to 12 hours or more a day. You're only limited to the human capacity. And so that really accelerated the idea of research and development. You can't get time back. We know it's not a renewable resource, but what it is, we can accelerate it. And so think about the idea, if we had, you could only fit 6 in Aquarius. What if we build this for 12, but we have multiple locations all over the world? And if I had 5 billion, which was what Bezos spent to go to space, took a few years off of our planet, I could probably put about 20 or 30 of these in the ocean. We would have an interconnected lab underwater that would drive research and development, solutions, and storytelling, just the way we had global collaboration with the therapeutics and the vaccine. Imagine if we could accelerate the solutions that we need for the planet. So think about medicines and discoveries. I just discovered in our location alone in Curacao, there are probably billions of microorganisms that could solve all kinds of cures for cancer and venoms that are morphine, but not toxic or non-addictive. All kinds of discoveries that we have no idea. We've explored less than 5% of our ocean. So we are missing an opportunity. And I think the sooner I can secure the capital, the sooner I can deploy the first one, which is hopefully in 3 years, and then thereafter start on the second and third. And in 10 years, hopefully have multiple of these.
What about underwater construction? Our line might not be there, but it strikes me, you just talked about it. Sure. Couldn't use it for underwater construction.
So I'm not sure if I understand.
Yeah, I was working on oil rigs.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You can only work for an hour at a time, you gotta come up.
Right.
But given what you just said,
Work longer.
Oh, yeah, I mean, and the people that do work on oil rigs and that they really put their lives in danger. And they do have these kind of like small little, what they call other bells, diving bells, and they basically go there, they decompress, and then they go back to work. That kind of thing. So it's not a kind of what we're envisioning is a habitat.
So you're thinking we could commercialize the technology?
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the engineering processes that we're going to learn, all of the waste management, the air management, all of those things there hasn't been new technologies in this regard in 20 plus 30 years. And think of just this whole thing as kind of an accelerator underwater of really collecting a value and IP of new processes. So, and looking at new ocean companies. So we'll be testing lots of new technologies, but yes, I agree with that.
So Nesha, you have the freedom to talk about whatever you want. and Julian, maybe you can talk about some most interesting founders that you guys have founded.
Not as good at that. About the wine in Paris. So I'll just default to the whole scared excited thing that we keep on doing. So for me, it's both. So as a startup founder, a past one, when I came into this whole world of family office and investing, my entire life and way I viewed the world completely flipped. And I think I've never had so many helping hands be extended to me. It was insane. I walk into a conference and people are like, how can I help you? No, you have a company? I'm like, no, it failed. And they're like, I still want to invest. Like, what's the thing? And I'm like, you don't understand, like it failed. And they're like, well, we want to help you succeed. Well, I have 20 friends that I'd like to connect you to. I want to help you here. And I was like, people are living. It's like, this is actually a reality. And so what I want to talk about is kind of what I mentioned at Phil's house yesterday, was this whole thing around crossing the bridge. Because when you're outside of this world, it is very dark. And I was a founder outside of this world. And that's probably one of the reasons why I wasn't successful in that sense. And you're alone, you're trying to figure things out. You don't know what you don't know. You're just trying to figure things out as you go along. And that's brutal. And you don't have that village. You don't have that ecosystem that you guys have been talking about in Seattle, in the Bay Area. You're not in the Bay Area, you're in Jacksonville, Florida. You don't have that community. And so I think the best thing that we can do, if we're talking about like KPIs and actual action items, is see if you can become that person who opens the door for the next generation of change makers. Because for me, Peter Lupoff was that person. And some of you guys know who he is. And he just opened, he's like, here, come work for me, open the door and completely changed the potential of what I can do on this planet. And so each one of you, I'm guessing, probably knows somebody who is young, wants to get involved, wants to do things that might not have access, and just inviting them to an event, just being there, being a mentor could completely change their life. And that I think is the next step. So specifically for the next gen who don't have access to these rooms. And that's what I kind of want to be part of. So
I totally agree, and I totally agree. And when you do that, it's zero was taking care of each other. You take care of other people when you need help. You don't know, somebody else steps in, and not the person you helped. So I just believe in just doing that.
I think they have a term for it now, it's called allyship. And often we are asked, how do people on the inside of anything, those who have, how do they help? And I think that's a very good path to do it. It's simply about giving access. As we form Masters Fund, for example, Anne and I have kind of a mission around it as well. It's funding the companies that are formed by diverse founders. It's also about access to the process of venture capital. Venture capital has historically been exclusive to men, and again, the white guys more than anybody else, so on, we get that, but we're opening the doors intentionally. You talked about, for example, don't just give me list of bodies, list of bodies, tell me you're doing it for a good reason, right? We recognize that the people who are highly qualified and never get asked to join, whether it's a board of directors or become a venture partner at a fund and so on, you have to go find them proactively. You have to be intentional around it. Oh, thanks. Appreciate it. That's all I should. So in terms of being intentional, we are forming our venture partner group that way and so on. Yes, we find people who have the qualities. It's what we call the assets and attributes required. Certainly the attribute must be there, but look carefully at the assets that you are requiring as well. For example, an emerging manager does not begin at 500 billion. They don't begin at 500 million. Right? They began somewhere else. Now, what is the path of somebody with a diverse background of any gender, any ethnicity, any racial background, and so on? We have assets and attributes. I would say focus on the attributes and figure out how you're going to give them assets. And that means, yes, there's a little more work. There's no question there is more work with our female CEOs than those who are perhaps COOs with a male CEO. And the reason? Because there are many more doors open to the guys than the gals. Again, just get realistic about it. And if they don't have the asset, then figure out how you're going to open it up and make sure that they have it. Because once given, they are outperformers.
Thank you.
Sure. Very, very quick question. So this is a phenomenon that you see here, right? In this country, but it's also the same situation you see in other
Worldwide.
places. And I see-
Absolutely.
I see it in Latin America. I hear you loud and clear,
Right.
you know.
Any kind of diversity, right? If you're going to do it, you have to recognize they have fewer assets, and once you open the doors to those assets, they can become outperformers.
That's great. To that point, there was somebody else who worked for the family office, and he mentioned that, I forget which, it was one of the countries in Latin America, where they help fund these women who were raped and sent into prostitution at a very young age with children, and they helped teach them driving and give them cars, secondhand cars, just usable cars. And these people got out of their situation and ended up, living fulfilled lives with their children and having homes and stuff like that. Because they were given something to do where they could earn some income and have their own destiny. Yeah, so we just got about 5 minutes left. And so maybe each one of you could touch on something that's really important to you and something you want to leave with the audience.
Let's see, that's a question. I think for me, I love this community because I already have felt that everyone is helping each other, really. It is about the ask and how can we propel, and it's not just about how can we make money. I think it is about how we can make money. I wouldn't be doing this if I could have a financial model that supported this, but it is also about the social ROI, right? How do we actually give back in a significant way? How do we make a difference? How do we move the needle? And so that's really important. And I have a visionary founder that exemplifies that. So it's easy every day. He reminds me how I can be better, how I, shouldn't use a straw, or, not eating meat for 1 day a week helps save the planet, or all those little tiny things, because we are one ecosystem. So every decision that we all individually make impacts the others. One way we're going to give back to every location that we're going to be in is we're going to make that country or that whatever sovereign state stakeholder. Whether we're going to use technology with blockchain. So every discovery that comes out of the ocean will be tagged, and we'll look at the provenance and the traceability so that when it then gets sold to a pharma company and becomes $1 billion, multi-billion-dollar product, that Curacao or whatever location or country that we took that out of will be participate in the upside. And that's never happened before. So that's how we'd like to make an impact and a difference in the world.
I'm really excited and passionate about so many things. I'd say
yes, it's a whole lifetime.
life is so exciting, guys, we're on this end of it. So I think one of the areas I'm really passionate about, and I think of Sean, we were talking about this yesterday. But if you're somebody and you're making $4,000 a month, you are now making $100 more than the average, 100 times more than the average person. Which is crazy. And I was just a realization washed over me. It's just like what position we're in. And something that I've really been growing more and more aware of is I also have this idea like, well, once I get to this point, I'm going to start being more generous. Once I get to this point in my life, once I become the next Elon Musk or whatever, I'm going to become more generous and dedicate all this money to philanthropy and helping others who are less off than myself. When you start realizing like, no, I'm wealthy. Like I have so much to give. Even if it's $500, that's a lot of money for a lot of people. And so I think for me, what's really been speaking to me is how can I start being more and more generous with the little that I have? And maybe that looks like partnering with philanthropies. Maybe that looks like sacrificing your time, your effort, giving to other people, connecting the dots like what Mark does so well. And that's how you can give to others. That's what I really want to, commit myself to doing this next year. So let's look at it.
I'd like to leave you with this thought. We have a number of different panels up there, and this one says, what's the name of ours? Diverse funding. No, it's diverse fund founders. Before I die, I'd like this not to exist. I would like us to simply be known as funders and founders.
Totally. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Come join our 361 firm community of investors and thought leaders. We have a lot of events created by the community as we collaborate on investments and philanthropic interests. Join us.